Hi guys, so this is just a quick intro to say what this video will be. Um, so when I was at Yelp last year, I did put a video up about it. I met lots and lots of lovely indie author friends, and made like a little group chat with some of them, and we're all sharing our books, and we thought it would be fun to narrate a little bit of each other's books. And my friend Lexi, who she's from the US, she's really cool. She's got a book called KIO, CAIO. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. But she has lots of books that seem like they're sort of like future, sort of fantasy, mystery sort of stuff. Worth checking out. And she has a friend. She explains it in this clip. Don't worry, you'll see. Um, that has got into narration. So she's got our friend from Yalk that I was at Yalk with, Roxan Burley, narrating a little bit of her book today. So hopefully you guys will enjoy. And I want to do more sort of stuff like this for my author friends and indie author friends because we've all got to help each other on here, haven't we?
Hi guys, it's Lexi. I'm back from C2E2 in Chicago. And one of the things that struck me while I was there, and strikes me every time I go to one of these conventions, is how warm the indie writer community is and how supportive we are of each other. And to that end, today I wanted to share a book of an author friend of mine. Her name is Roxan Burley, and her book is called Bloodstream of Moonlight. And we thought it would be fun to have not me read it because I don't like to hear my own voice, but I know someone who just got out of acting school. He goes by UNBC, and he has agreed to read this for me to post on my site about her work. So this gives me the chance to show off her work and also to show off his narration skills. So enjoy.
Doctor, we urgently need your assistance. The voice was muffled, but still loud enough to reach her. Emma, wake up now. The borrowed name roused her, piercing through the fog of sleep. Her body was rocked by a shove, jolting her awake. Bleary-eyed, Iris stared into the unforgiving face of Nora, whose pig nose and ruddy cheeks were aflame with anger. Sighing, she lifted her head from her outstretched arm, working the kinks out of her taut neck muscles. Falling asleep on the job again? Nora sneered at her. So would you if you'd worked a double shift without a break? Iris sighed as she carefully opened her other hand, which was clamped around her necklace. She had held on to it so tightly that an impression had been made on her palm of the small key attached to the chain. She gently traced the 3 vertical lines embossed on the opal stone with her fingertips. Nora coughed. Any time now, Emma. We have an emergency on our hands. Life and death. Your talents are required. Nora's sarcastic tone made Ira look up from her contemplation, dropping her necklace against her chest as she shook the dream from her mind. Placing both palms on the scratched melamine table, she pushed herself up, shoving her chair back. She towered over Nora, who seemed to recoil inwardly, dropping her gaze towards Ira's dark purple Doc Martens. Ira strode from the gloomy staff room without keeping a backwards glance to see if Nora was keeping pace with her long strides. Ira could feel her heart rate increasing, but she made herself take a deep, steadying breath, and sent a pulse of magic to soothe her weary muscles. She instantly felt more alert, her head clear. The faces of the nurses they passed were tense and on guard. She knew that whatever she was heading towards was serious. Striding down the hall, Nora running to keep up with her, she asked over her shoulder, "What's the emergency?" 3 males have been attacked. 2 are unconscious with no visible injuries. They've been booked in for an urgent CT scan. The last male has broken an arm and a severe laceration down his chest. He's bleeding out, and we can't get the wound to clot. His BP has dropped and his breathing is ragged. Weaving between patients and colleagues, Iris slammed through the battered double doors to the treatment area. A brief glance around the open ward showed dozing patients, and she could hear the constant beeping of many machines. The room was dilapidated, with most of the windows blocked up or smashed, the walls flaked with peeling paint. 2 unconscious figures in military gear nearest the door were the new patients. Observing the stillness and silence for a heartbeat, Ira entered the first treatment room, noting the patient on the bed and the nurse standing over him, the smell of antiseptic and blood almost overwhelming. She processed all of this in the blink of an eye, before launching herself into action once again. The patient was laying on his back, his black top shredded and saturated with the blood. His skin was ashen, and his breathing came in ragged gasps. The heart monitor was beeping, showing his dangerously increased heart rate. His head was rolled to one side, black hair obscuring his closed eyes. Ira shut the door with a deafening thud, rattling the frame in Nora's face as she tried to storm in. She firmly turned the lock and, advancing to close the blinds, acknowledged Nora's exasperated huff with a smug smile. Now for the task at hand. Taking a deep breath, she finally raised her eyes to Eloise. Ira sensed the mounting horror in her friend's dark eyes. These were the same injuries as before, the same knife wounds that killed their last patient. But they'd been inexperienced and hesitant before. They would not make the same mistake this time. If her eyes were black like before. She swept the thought from her head. Breathe. Think. I'm a professional now. The smell of his blood coated Ira's throat, making her gag. She stepped up to the side of the bed, watching Eloine's slender hands pressing gauze against the wound, trying to stem the bleeding. Her black-painted fingernails stood in stark contrast to the crimson blood coating her skin. Eloine's black hair had escaped her ponytail, plastering itself to her sweaty brow. Her nurse's uniform was stained in blood. Ira could hear her heart, the erratic beating showing just how panicked her friend was. I think he has a pneumothorax in his left lung where the puncture wound was first made. Ira could clearly see that the laceration started above his pectoral and continued down his chest to his abdomen in a jagged sweep. A serrated knife had been used to carve him open, leaving his body a massacred mess. The wound looked to be seeping a black substance. His breathing was scratchy and laboured, which worried her. She stretched towards the wall behind her for the hand sanitizer, cleaned her hands, and nodded for Eloise to move over slightly so she could gain better access. Laying a hand on her friend's shoulder, she said, "This will not be like before." Pushing the man's leather jacket back, she tore open his shirt. Without the fabric in the way, the blood pooled and ran down his chest in dark rivulets. With a feather-light touch, she placed her hands palm down either side of the entry wound, closed her eyes in concentration, and directed her magic into his body. She would normally make a display of using her stethoscope whilst her magic flowed through the patient, so as to not arouse suspicion. Since the argument with Nora 6 months ago, she had learnt to hide her powers from prying eyes. But not today. Time was not on her side, and even if it was, she didn't have the extra strength required to conceal her glow. Ira felt her hands heating and, behind closed lids, sensed the spark of light as her powers charged to her will. Opposite her, she heard Eloine's intake of breath. The magic seeped from her cupped hands and spread into the patient's body. Like a